Hello, my friends. I wanted to give you a story about symptoms, which is, one of the things our brains are so hyper focused on when we're in recovery. And I often tell people that the biggest shifts in your symptoms will happen after recovery. And that's why I want to tell you this story today, because as I continue to live into the maintenance stage of my own recovery, it's pretty amazing to see the shifts that continue to happen in my body and in my health and my well-being post recovery. And just a little bit on that at first, part of the reason I say this is that the science behind how neuroplasticity leads to complete healing is that once that stress switch is turned off, once we're fully in rest and digest, we're completely in that we're no longer stuck in fight, flight, freeze. That's the point at which your brain and nervous system, and therefore every single body system inside of you, your hormones, that's one of the longest cycles, especially for women, for men as well. Your circadian rhythm, your circulatory system, your digestive system, like all of these systems, once that stress switch is off, that's the point at which they begin to be able to fully be regulated and to have that regeneration of just the cell tissue and the function and being in rhythm begin to start happening. And often our symptoms are a symptom of being out of rhythm, out of that rhythm of health. And so a lot of symptoms dissipate after you hit recovery, after the stress switch is off. And that's my personal definition of being recovered from limbic system impairment or chronic illness, is that you reached a point where you can tell your stress switch is off. You're in rest and digest as your baseline. You get activated maybe sometimes, a trigger, a stressful event, whatever, and then your system downregulates itself back into rest and digest. So that's the context for this. And my situation is not everyone's, but is one where my circumstances were a very big, a big player in my chronic illness, and recovery involved very big life shifts like getting divorced, getting on my feet financially, becoming financially independent, becoming a single mom, buying a home, moving, all recovering from relational trauma, etc. So there's been a lot of stuff I've needed to work on post limbic impairment recovery in order to reach a place of ideal health. That may or may not resonate with you, but the science is still relevant. And my biggest goal is to give people hope, especially when they're in really difficult circumstances. So the story is that my children are yelling very loudly, and that's going to be the case. So this is especially for the ladies. I never had healthy hormonal cycles. Circadian rhythm, struggled with sleep most of my life from the time I was even pretty young. Struggled with appetite, struggled with satiation, my feminine cycle was never regular, literally never from the time it started, not ever. If I had a cycle a few times a year, I was lucky. Not a fun experience, as much as I know a lot of women would wish to have less of that. It's actually, when your hormones are off, it's just pretty torturous regardless of how they're off. So for me, what this has looked like has been focusing on meeting needs, focusing on making sure that I'm staying regulated, feeling safe, feeling contained, able to come back to calm throughout the day, to the point where, I had insomnia for about a decade. I resolved it in recovery at times, but again, post-recovery involved plenty of PTSD and things that put me back into a place where sleep, eating, things like that, being calm were very difficult. Even though I was recovered, it was still a rare experience to feel fully calm, to be able to sleep at night or to be able to eat. And as I've continued to change my circumstances and create better circumstances for myself, really, I had a really severe eating disorder throughout that as well. So in all of those things, this deeper level, late stage level of healing is just so incredibly beautiful. Like, there's so much healing that can happen after recovery that is just on a much deeper level. And, once that stress switch is off, where we're really able to resolve issues that have been present our whole lives. And for me, what that's looked like has actually been building trust with my body for the first time, and having a regular cycle for the first time, and being able to allow my weight to fluctuate from, 15 pounds more, 20 pounds more than my ideal to less, 5, 10, 15 pounds less than my ideal, and allow my body to find its own equilibrium. And that's been something I'm really proud of for myself, and just want to share as a note of encouragement is, I started recovery almost 7.5 years ago, and I'm hitting a point in the last 6 months to a year or two where I've actually been able to create circumstances that allow for my body to have all of those things functionally active all the time, like appetite, sleep, hormonal cycles, like actually happening in rhythm as they should be most of the time on a regular schedule. And that's something I've literally never experienced. It's a level of health and well-being that I was never introduced to. And that's also been one of the biggest messages I've wanted to share, is that you can attain levels of health you've never had before. If you're persistent and recognize that health is the result of met regulatory needs, you're limitless. You're limitless. You can create the circumstances you need to be able to have whatever function you want to have. And I cannot tell you how sweet it is. I'm almost 35, and it's the first time in my life I'm like, okay, I think, sleep and food and like having a normal hormonal cycle are pretty close to predictable and normal and feel good and natural, and not something I'm striving for, working towards, or hoping will happen for the first time in my life. It's pretty amazing. And how that feels as a person to just have that level of health is so incredible. It's such a high level of abundance. And it's just something that, again, I want you to know, if you've got symptoms you've had, whatever they may be, your whole life, hormonal things in particular, I think take longer to heal, because the hormone cycles are just longer, versus respiratory, digestive, circulatory system things are very in the moment. They're very rapid. The change can happen more rapidly in those areas, neurologically as well. But hormones are just naturally on a longer cycle. So I just want to share this goodness that there is so much healing that takes place post-recovery. Don't stop just once you've hit a point where you're out of fight or flight or freeze. Keep moving forward. If any level of health you want, any level of function you want, even if you've never had it, it's possible. It's just a matter of believing in that, understanding the science, and being willing to keep applying it as best you can over time. There is nothing that is unachievable with this information. It's incredible. Love you guys.